there's an absolute two-way relationship between how you feel on the inside and how that's expressed on your body on the outside. So how you feel on the inside and how that's expressed on the outside. For example, it's why you smile when you're happy. You don't smile because you remember to smile. You don't say, I feel so happy. What is it I'm supposed to do with my face at the moment? And then you smile, it's an automatic thing. So the outside, the body on the outside expresses naturally how you feel on the inside, and that's a two-way street.
Greetings and welcome to the Dr. Espen podcast. I am Espen. Today I have the privilege of talking with a fellow researcher and physician who is going to, or I should say specialist, who is going to teach you one of the most powerful principles I believe could ever be applied when it comes to the human experience, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to personal health, and when it comes to how to show up in the world in a way that you will be treated the way you want to be treated. And by doing this, I think we're going to be able to really break through some things that might have been holding us back in our personal lives with our emotions and, as I said, with our relationships. Today, we're going to talk about the power of kindness. And not just the power of kindness, but the biophysiological effects on the body, the mental aspects, and the effects on the mind, and the effects on the emotions when we apply these powerful tools. Today, we're talking with a gentleman that has a PhD in understanding how the cardiovascular system works and overall health. And for those of you who don't know, having a PhD means that this person has taken a deep dive into a specific topic that no one has touched in this way before and received the doctorate for this type of research. And today, learning about the tools of kindness applied by so many years of research is going to be absolutely groundbreaking. So Dr. David Hamilton is here with us today. He is an author, a writer, a columnist, and a speaker. He's the former research and development scientist, now author of 12 books, and is an expert in the mind-body connection, including alternative practices for self-esteem, healing, and how to apply, as I said before, the power of kindness to really improve our lives, and not just improve our relationships, but to have an actual physical change on the heart and the cardiovascular system. This is going to be incredible. So that was a long bio, but I'm excited because I just had a quick tune in before here, and David and I are chatting, and what's coming through is really powerful as to what we can do to apply these completely inexpensive tools with such powerful research behind it to improve our lives. I want to say a very special welcome, Dr. David Hamilton. How are you today, mate?
I'm very well, Espen. Thank you very much for having me on. I was smiling as I was listening to you read out a bio. Every time I hear someone read a bio, and you did it so well, it always makes me sound more cool than I actually feel. It's just one of these kind of strange things. But thanks for your nice introduction. It's really nice to be here.
And of course, yeah, it's a privilege, and thank you for taking many years out of your life to sit, to study, to read, to devote yourself to understand how these powerful tools, including kindness, can have an effect on the body. I mean, to get a PhD takes a lot of years, it's a lot of hard work, and you studied the aspects of the cardiovascular system and health. So I want to just start there. How does kindness have a direct impact on our mental and our physical health?
Well, first of all, when you be kind, and let me rephrase when you be kind, when you have an experience of kindness, and what that means is you could be the giver of the kindness, the receiver of the kindness, or even the person who witnesses someone else being kind, even if that's on a social media video, for example. When you have an experience of kindness, that leads to physical changes in the brain. And one of the most remarkable ones that really help to support our mental health is some of these changes are the exact opposite in the brain and in the body of what happens when you have an experience of stress. And for that reason, I often say that kindness physiologically and neurologically is the opposite of stress. Most people assume the opposite of stress is peace or calm. Peace or calm morally represent the absence of stress, not the opposite. The opposite physiologically and neurologically is kindness. And one of the things that happens is some of the products of an experience of kindness actually dial down the intensity of a region at the brain that plays a key role in stress, worry, fear, and anxiety. in the long term, what that actually does is it takes some of the heat or some of the sting off some stressful events in our life. So it has a net positive effect on our overall long-term mental health. On a physical level, where it gets really interesting is experiences of kindness can actually reduce our blood pressure, not just because they feel relaxing, but because of an actual physical effect on our blood vessels. We actually produce, when you have an experience of kindness, we produce what I refer to as kindness hormones. And I really call them kindness hormones because to draw a parallel with stress hormones, which are produced through experiences of stress, but because they're opposite, what happens with our kindness hormones is they park or they bind to our blood vessels and they cause a physical change in shape that reduces the force the heart has to pump with to get blood through. And so the knock-on effect of that is a reduction in blood pressure. So there's an actual physical effect on the heart as a consequence of having an experience of kindness, whether you're the giver, receiver, or even the witness to it.
Brilliant. And with that in mind, are we talking oxytocin, love molecule, serotonin, dopamine, neurotransmitters as such, or are we referring to something different specifically?
Well, actually, one of the primary kindness hormones is oxytocin. You know, I refer to it as a kindness hormone because it plays such a key role in the experience of kindness. Most people know it as a reproductive hormone or even a trust hormone, but it's a very, very central cardiovascular hormone as well. It's probably a lesser known role, but it's actually one of its most significant roles in the body is to maintain health of the cardiovascular system.
Absolutely. And for those who don't know, oxytocin is secreted in large amounts when we're experiencing love, giving and receiving love and kindness and other things like David is saying, but also particularly for the mother when she has a little one that she's carrying. And of course, after birth, huge surges of oxytocin that creates that bond. And we know it to be vital, not just to be important, but to be vital because when the little one is born, when the mother has given birth, the original time for them to be together is imperative. The longer, if there's a physical separation, the more detrimental it is for the child's survival, including his long-term mental and emotional health. But that being together is, of course, a major part of oxytocin as well. So then, David, just to be clear, what you're saying in essence is that kindness has a direct biophysiological, as in a healing effect on the heart.
Absolutely. And absolutely. In fact, that was even recently demonstrated with cardiovascular patients. So patients that had been diagnosed with high blood pressure, with hypertension, were invited to participate in a study where researchers gave them a small sum of money each week for 3 weeks. Now, half of them, they said, I would like you to spend this money on yourself each week for the 3 weeks. The other half, they said, I'd like you to spend this money on other people for the 3 weeks. And at the end of the 3 weeks, those who'd spent the money on others, in other words, had been kind for that 3 weeks, had significantly lower blood pressure, both systolic and diastolic. And the strength of the effect was comparable to the effect of antihypertensive medication and exercise. I mean, isn't that amazing? Simply just being kind.
Oh, come on. I mean, it's interesting because we have the world of statins and drugs and all of these things, and we know that they have physical effects on the body. But what if we knew that hugging someone, giving someone a compliment, or doing something for someone else that needs it more simply would have such a powerful healing on the receiving end? I always say being selfless is almost like being selfish because of the law of reciprocity. By that you give, you receive. I love this. I mean, in some of your work, and I want to talk a little bit about your books in a moment, but in some of your work, I see this correlation between kindness, as in the emotion, the intention, the action, whatever, and anti-aging. And I'm really big on this, really big on how we can maintain not just peak performance for myself, but for people to be alive. I believe we have, we are this beautiful consciousness expressed in a physical form. So then by default, the body is the only place the spirit gets to live, is my hypothesis or my belief anyway. And so with that in mind, when we are kind, we can have a beautiful, healthy temple that will actually reverse our biological aging over time if we apply something as simple and as powerful as kindness. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about kindness and its potential anti-aging benefits, please.
First of all, I totally agree with your hypothesis. I totally resonate with that as well. It's exactly how I would also think about and describe that phenomenon. But in terms of anti-aging, if I could share with you two pieces of research that really back up exactly what you said there, Espen. One of the bits of researchers were looking at measuring the rate of loss of DNA end caps called telomeres. So, most people probably know telomeres. They're little end caps in the DNA that protects it, in a sense, from unwinding and joining the wrong way. And they're a bit like those plastic end caps on our shoelaces that are called aglets. And the rate of loss of our telomeres through wear and tear is a very accurate way of measuring the rate of biological aging. So researchers got three groups of people. One group was just the comparison group, and they measured the rate of loss of telomeres. The second group were asked to practice mindfulness meditation, so simple, just mindful breathing each day for the next 6 weeks. The third group were asked to practice what I call kindfulness. And kindfulness is like any mindfulness practice where at least some of the attention, some of the object of attention, instead of being the breath, is now on kindness, on maybe thinking kindly of people or wishing nice things for people, but it's on kindness. And for each group, they measured the rate of loss of telomeres. Now, they got the standard rate of loss in the group who did no practice at all. And what they found in those who did mindfulness, there was a tiny slowing down of the rate of loss, but nothing really within error margins. But those who did the kindfulness, there was no loss of telomeres at all during that 6 weeks. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean if you be kind, you'll never age, but all the same that, I've been practicing this for 173 years, but, no, I'm joking. But, but
yes, yeah.
but what it did mean is there was a significant anti-aging effect inside the cell, right down to the genetic level, that was a consequence of this continual repetitive experience of kindness. Now, another study, if I can share this with you, was a more practical study. Researchers were looking at aging of skin cells. So I think that's a phenomena that most people think of when it comes to aging, that they're more physically aware of in terms of what they see when they look in the mirror. And researchers were looking at how these cells age. And what they find is one of the factors is high levels of free radicals. In science terms, we call it oxidative stress. So there's high levels of free radicals
one
inside
of the major
cells.
ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That play a role in aging of the heart, aging of the brain. They play a role in dementia, Alzheimer's, a whole range of other things. And what they found when they put the cells under stress in the lab, and that stress was meant to simulate the types of stresses that we're under in our everyday lives. And what they found was the production of high levels of free radicals. But then they did the same experiment, this time in the presence of oxytocin, our kindness hormone. And amazingly, the levels of free radicals dropped dramatically inside the skin cells. And what was amazing about that was a demonstration of a potent anti-aging effect produced by our key kindness hormone. And the key to this is you can't eat or drink kindness hormones. You can't put them in a smoothie or sprinkle them over your dinner or your breakfast. You have to make them. And that comes through your experiences. That comes through the things that you're doing and the way that you're being, and even in some respects, the way that you treat people. And so what we see now is an actual physiological anti-aging effect in our skin cells and right down to the genetic level, simply through being kind.
Oh, I love the summary of that. And again, you can't sprinkle it on your food. You can't put it as a supplement in your tea or drink it, have it as supplements in the morning, which means that you can't buy it, which means that you're not going to basically need to go and get it, which means it doesn't cost any money, which means you have it inside of you. You can create it. So you can create oxytocin by choosing every day to give and receive kindness. And by that, have proven healing effects on your body, your mind, and your emotions. This is really, again, I love taking something that is such a, in alignment with universal law, so powerful yet so simple and completely free of charge, and just giving our listeners and viewers an opportunity to kind of tune in to this following question. How are you going to be more kind to yourself today? And how are you going to be more kind to other people and whoever and whatever else around you today? So maybe take a moment to tune into that kindness for yourself and kindness for others. And while we do that, I want to go quantum for a moment because this is really exciting. We're talking about the effects that kindness, the choice of being kind to self and other has on the body and the mind. We've discussed this, powerful. And now I want to open the conversation to the field, if you will, and just remind listeners and viewers just a quick synopsis, and I'll hand over to you. I remember many years ago I read about the Maharishi effect, the stunning research that was done, I believe, in England, where approximately 7,000 or so meditators were meditating on peace, kindness, and love and compassion and these primary higher vibratory emotions for a period of time. And what they witnessed was a reduction in global crime rate, I believe, by up to 16%, and a lot of other things change. In your mind, with your, I should say, in your research and in your experience, what is the effects on the collective consciousness when an individual and or a group of people will practice kindness?
Exactly the same thing. I mean, I remember reading about the Maharishi effect as well, and it's so incredibly powerful because it demonstrates the power of collective consciousness. And if we can, and to be honest, it's one of the motivating factors, Espen, behind the work that I'm doing and trying to promote kindness. Because my belief is if more of us focus on kindness, one of the reasons I write about the science of this is really just to get people thinking about it and then more likely to do kindness. I mean, obviously that it's interesting in its own right, but one of my background motivations is really just to get people thinking about kindness and being kind more, because what that does, it's like adding little droplets of colour into a grey cloud. I've got this, and I think of it sometimes as like, imagine there's a cloud above each of us, and that cloud, the colour of it, the texture of it represents your own consciousness. But all our clouds mix and match and merge, and what we have then is a cloud which has a colour and texture in your local household, in your workplace, in your local community, in the country, and in the entire world. And the only way you can change the colour and texture of all these other clouds is by changing the colour and texture of your own. And that comes through the quality of person that you're being. And I absolutely believe, just like if you drop a wee bit of colour, dye into, a colour into a cup that has other colours, that colour dye, if you keep dripping it in, will begin to change the colour of what's in the glass, of what's in the cup. And by the same tone, if we continue to think kindly, speak kindly, and be kind, best we can, of course, then we're adding these droplets of colour and texture into the collective consciousness. And I absolutely believe this is why I say that kindness really can change the world. And it starts with each of us individually and how we think, speak, and act.
Oh, spot on. Now, here's the twister for you. And I think it's important because, what I've observed with a lot of my patients and students over the years, and I do a lot of personal development, large rooms with a lot of people, and a lot of what comes up for me for the people in the room that I've observed, which I'll get to in my second question, which is, self-love and self-compassion, self-kindness, if you will, and the importance of that. But I want to quickly ask then, we're talking about kindness. And I understand for some people, there can be certain people have narcissistic traits, more for me, first me and then others. Other people have passive submissive traits. Okay, so now we're experiencing someone being too kind in form of submission and or, subordination. At what point does kindness change its form to no, stop, goodbye, or whatever that might need to be, so that it's authentic kindness to self and others within, a boundary or a framework? What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked that question. It's something I wrote a lot about, actually, in my most recent book, in what I call conundrums. It's these challenging, what do you do in X, Y, or Z situation? And I think, first and foremost, just recognizing the different dimensions of what self-kindness can be. And I think a lot of people think historically we think of self-kindness as selfish. And that's because what's given high esteem in the world is being selfless. And that's given such high esteem, being selfless, being kind to others in most countries around the world, that it almost feels selfish to do something for ourselves. But if we change that a little bit and consider the full range of what self-kindness can be, and self-kindness can actually be saying no. It doesn't have to be a hard no. It can be a soft no. It can be depending on the context, it could be a gentle no, maybe later, maybe some other time kind of thing. And it can also be setting boundaries. It doesn't always have to be lavish spa days, which I think a lot of people have when they think of self-kindness. It can just be taking time for ourselves. In my diary, I actually write meeting with self so that I give myself the same priority for my mental health as I would do when I create time and space for someone else. And so by recognizing that self-kindness really matters, and it's like you can't pour from an empty cup. I think there's a scale, there's a line. And at one end of the extreme, when your cup feels abundant and overflowing, you have lots of energy and time and space in your life and resources with which to help other people. But then there's other times, Espen, when your cup feels almost empty and you're away at this other end of the extreme. And at this point, first and foremost, you have to look after yourself. And whatever that means, it might mean create boundaries, it might mean saying no, whatever it means, you have to you have to focus on filling up your own cup. Because if you don't fill up your own cup, then there's nothing left of you with which to authentically give to and help other people. So if we fill up our own cup and move our cup load further in that direction, then there's more of us available with which to help other people. So when that kind of thing, when we're becoming submissive, I think it's recognizing what self-kindness is, and that it doesn't have to just be an expensive, lavish spa day, and recognizing that it's very important to find a sweet spot, a balance point somewhere between these both extremes, and I think just recognizing that immediately brings to mind how we're behaving. It's one of the things I noticed by researching on kindness is I start to notice what I'm doing and what I'm not doing. And so simply by realizing that it is important to practice self-kindness, we start to recognize our own behaviors, what we do, but also where I fall short, for example.
Oh, pivotal. Okay, so one of the things that I love to do on this podcast and on this show is to really give listeners and viewers a tangible takeaway. So just take a moment, if you're listening to this recording now, pause and journal for a moment. Journal where you need to put yourself first and have more self-kindness. David spoke to this just now. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Disregard the fact that it's a standard expression. It's a critical component. I see a lot of parents in my courses, and one of the things that I realized for me as a father as well, that sometimes we have a tendency to put everyone else first. And as I say, kids don't always do what we say, right? But they always become like we are. And so then by default, if we love our children, we have to give ourselves permission to put ourselves first, to fill our cup, so that when we are vibrating at that high frequency, when we're resonating from kindness and love and joy, then our children will embody that energy. And we know you spoke to it on a cellular level. I'm certain this goes intergenerationally as well, of course. As we understand, things are passed down, and we can choose to pass down kindness instead of other things. So I wanted to ask you now, if we understand that this has such powerful effects on the body, powerful effects on the mind, powerful effects on relationships, and the essence of kindness and what it means collectively through the quantum field and or collective consciousness, my next question pertains specifically to self-kindness. If I were to summarize, hundreds of thousands of people that I've worked with in events and fewer people one-on-one, I would say that the lack of self-love and the lack of self-kindness, the lack of self-compassion is at the root of much of our suffering. And it's different levels for different people, of course, depending on what they've been through and how much work they've done on themselves, etc. But I want to ask you for your opinion, based on all the research that you've done on kindness. How important is self-kindness? And we just touched on it before, but I really want to go deep, even into the self-love and being okay with how we show up in the world and being kind with ourselves. What are your top tools to ensure that we can, one, break through any limitations stopping us from experiencing self-care and compassion and kindness? And what do you do then once you've had the breakthrough to maintain it?
Great question. And I would echo exactly what you say, because all the work that I've done has also shown me that for the vast majority of us, what lies right at the heart of many of the problems in our lives is self-love, lack of self-love, lack of self-compassion. In fact, I wrote a book a few years ago on the subject called I Heart Me. And I really wrote it for myself, Espen, because I was the one that was struggling. Despite how I seemed to show up to the world in front of other people, even in the audiences at my talks, I was suffering on the inside. And so I spent 2 years researching and writing about the subject. And if I could offer something that's a bit kind of, maybe a bit kind of left field in that respect, but that was a game changer for me, is there's an absolute two-way relationship between how you feel on the inside and how that's expressed on your body on the outside. So how you feel on the inside and how that's expressed on the outside. For example, it's why you smile when you're happy. You don't smile because you remember to smile. You don't say, I feel so happy. What is it I'm supposed to do with my face at the moment? And then you smile, it's an automatic thing. So the body on the outside expresses naturally how you feel on the inside. And that's a two-way street. And the beauty of that two-way street is what you do with the body on the outside can absolutely and does absolutely impact how you feel on the inside, to the extent that there's a resonance between the two. So this is the first absolute game changer I found. I learned when I was working on self-love and self-compassion was noticing how I hold and move my body in particular situations, especially in situations where I don't feel very confident or I don't feel very self-assured. Some people whom I might feel nervous around, some situations where I don't feel confident. And I noticed that I'm holding my body in. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit here to make the point. But what I learned is if you just stand up straight, I focus on a few different things like head, keep your head up, relax shoulders, your spine straight, your back as straight and upright as you can, and then breathe, relax. So head, shoulders, spine, and breath. It's like that wee song. Well, it's not a song, but head, shoulders, spine, and breath, head, shoulders, spine, and breath. I mean, that's not the words, but I put the words to that music. But by focusing relentlessly on that, what actually happens is we train our neural networks, we train our neural pathways, so that our brain now starts to fix into a habit how you're holding and moving your body. And as that becomes a habit, then what also becomes a habit is a way of feeling, i.e. more self-confidence, self-belief, self-compassion, that's consistent with how you're now holding your body. And that for me was an absolute game changer. It's a very, very practical tool, not so much a spiritual insight tool, but I just wanted to offer your listeners something that for me personally was an absolute game changer. It got me up to the next level from where I was originally, just simply harnessing the power of how you hold and move your body.
Literally, it got you back. I mean, that speaks volumes. And we know this through human behavior as well as research in physiology, that your form becomes your function. So when you have a forward head posture, your posture is not doing well. I mean, firstly, try this. I'll show you guys something really cool. If you're watching this now, try this. If you're sitting or standing, all right, just push your chin as far forward as you can, but keep your shoulders the same. Push your chin all the way forward. This is only moving the neck and head. Now take a big breath in. See how much air you can get in. Feel how limited it is as you keep pushing your head forward. Okay, now breathe out. Now simply roll your shoulders back, lift your chin up. Now take a big breath in. Feel the difference. And by that's forward head posture only. We're not even talking about the shoulders or anything else. So we know that the triangle, focus, physiology, and language, this is extremely important. What David is saying here is that stand up. Don't slouch. Correct your posture. Be strong in how you stand, or be aware of how you're standing, and know that it has a direct effect on the body. Tool number one. I absolutely love it. What else can we apply right away to make sure that we start to experience more self-love, self-care, and self-care and kindness and compassion?
The second thing for me, I would say, is just simply remind yourself that practicing self-love and self-compassion is of primary importance in our lives. Because if we're not feeling well, if we're not feeling that we have something with which to give, using that expression again, you can't pour from an empty cup. Simply recognizing where you are in your life, then if you begin to prioritize that, and there's a number of things you can do. As I say, one of the things I do is I put a note in my diary. But another thing that part of that is do things in your life that have meaning for you. that have purpose for you, and do them on purpose. And when I say do them on purpose, do it as an act of self-love. I'll give you an example. So I've always loved science all my life and mathematics. So one of my acts of self-compassion, of self-love, was to register for a part-time university degree in mathematics and physics. And I'm in my final year at the moment. I'm not doing it because I need the qualification. I'm just doing it because I'm interested in it and I love it. And I'm doing it as an act of self-care because it's something I've always liked to do. And by doing something that has meaning for you and doing it on purpose, the key is on purpose. It doesn't have to be a big thing like that. It can be anything. But it's the doing it on purpose that makes it, by recognizing that it supports your mental and physical health, that is what makes it an act of self-care, an act of self-compassion. It's the on-purpose bit. It's recognizing this supports my mental and my physical health. Therefore, I'm going to do it today. And it's the therefore, I'm going to do it today that makes it an immediate act of self-care, act of self-compassion.
Oh, I love this. Okay, listeners, viewers, pausing again, coming back to the question, what do I need to do right now to give myself more care and compassion? And what is that? Is it a habit? Is it a sport? Is it a hobby? Is it something that you could do? I love it. The first thing that came up for me, which I recognize, David, being an entrepreneur, having 40 something staff and doing all these things, and my self-care and self-compassion comes down to the boundaries of planning. So, for example, I work 9 months a year. I'm about to travel off to Europe now for a month with my family because I know that when I do work those 9 months a year, I'm on and I work hard. And I want to make sure that I have time with my family, that I have quality time with myself, that I get to travel and turn my brain off from work. So one of my ways of self-kindness has been to build a really strong team with amazing people that do stuff better, faster, and cheaper than I can, so that when I take time off, the business works, everything flows, and it's not perfect, and I don't think it'll ever be perfect, but it's certainly a heck of a lot better than me trying to hold it all together. So for those of you out there that are entrepreneurs, maybe mothers, fathers, where are you trying to hold it all together? And where can you either let go of some things that are creating too much complexity in your life, or stepping into a ritual or decision such as you're enrolling in a university degree because you freaking love it, booking a trip, going on holidays, doing something as a hobby for yourself. So go ahead and pause this, breathe, and write down what you're going to be doing for yourself moving forward and how you're going to apply more self-kindness. Okay, so I've got two more questions for you. The second last question that I'd love to explore, for you to tell us a little bit more about your books. I think you've done 12 now, but there's another one coming out called The Joy of Actually Giving a Fuck. Can you tell us a little bit about what does the joy of giving a fuck really mean, and how? I'm excited about this because there's another book that speaks on the other end, and I want to find out what the joy behind this really means and what the book is all about.
It really means that there's a great amount of happiness and contentment to be found in helping other people. And I don't necessarily mean the big, noticeable, observable acts of kindness. I mean in the everyday small things, like those little words of encouragement, the pat on the shoulder that says, you've got this. And if by chance you don't, I've got you, kind of thing. It's those little words of encouragement and support. It's the small things. It's the checking in on people. It's the showing up for people, friends and family. So it's the multitude of the everyday ordinary things that we do all the time. And there's a great amount of happiness and joy to be found in those everyday ordinary small things. Obviously the book's much more than that. I go into how being kind affects your heart, your aging process, like we've talked about already, your immune system, how to deal with tricky situations, how to be a leader with kindness, like in a business context. But primarily, the centerpiece of the book is about the fact that there is a great amount of support to your mental health and physical health that come from those everyday, ordinary, small things. So it's about, to use the title of the book, it's about giving a fuck about people, about each other, and saying, I care about you, and I'm going to help you in some way, best I can.
And you know what? As we know by the law of quantum entanglement and our connection to the universe, if you will, when we have an act or a thought even or a feeling of kindness, that will have an effect on everything around us. And in the field, as you mentioned, I love the analogy of the colors. I think this is really, really clear for those who are visual learners. It's just like, aha. So I breathe and I meditate, or I action, or I converse through kindness. And that's a little bit of color into the field, and it changes the field. If I keep on doing it, there'll be a lot of color into the field, which will then change everything around me. As we know, we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. So if we then begin with self-kindness and kindness to others, what are we going to experience? What's life going to be like? Well, sounds like kindness. So again, so simple yet so powerful. I think this is really awesome, and I love how you spoke to this. And I would just bring up quickly my understanding of neuroplasticity. Neurons that fire together, they wire together. When we focus on something, that's what we find. So if we focus on kindness, and we can start to see that around us, and we keep on doing it, reading the book. I mean, reading this book and understanding, I don't know how many ways and different ideas that you've got in there as to practice kindness, but of course that's giving to ourselves as well. So by the power of neuroplasticity, when you repeat the things, and you speak the things, when you feel the things, when you share the things, and you do the little things, smiling to the homeless person on the street, or asking if he or she needs a bottle of water, something, automatically we're having a huge effect on our life. I love this. I was somewhat selfish, I would say, in my intention with this. I took my son when he was just turned 5, and we flew down to Indonesia, to a place called Lombok, and we went to 3 orphanages. And the last one we found, 85 children, they're all sleeping on the tiles. None of them had a bed. And so I was explaining to my son, I said, hey, these kids, they don't have a mum and they don't have a dad. And he couldn't really fathom that concept. That was enough. What do you mean? I said, no, they don't. They have people taking care of them, but they don't have that. And what else? They don't always have the food and these things. And again, I say selfish because I wanted to demonstrate for his awareness how much he already had to be grateful for. If we can't see the comparison, if we can't see the difference, we may take it for granted. And then when I finally said they don't have any beds, he looked at me, and he was, it's like, where do they sleep? And we took a picture of it, and there was this 2 millimeter thin rubber little thing on the ground, on the tiles. And so he was like, what are we going to do, Dad? Can I get some of my money from my piggy bank and see if we can buy them? And I said, now we're talking, So we drove, we found a mattress wholesaler. We sent one of the locals in there to barter and bargain. And then we came out with mattresses for all the kids, and he got to experience giving that and sharing that and seeing the joy in their eyes as well, And again, I say somewhat selfish because I, as a father, wanted to demonstrate to a young mind ready to, create an imprint of reality as to there is so much indeed to be grateful for. And what we focus on is what we find. Why don't we take this moment, as David has inspired us, to feel into being kind to ourselves and others. Maybe you set that as an intention. Maybe that's a standard. Maybe that's a new way of, or next level maybe, of operating for those of you listening. Okay, David, I've got one last question for you straight off the cuff. Are you ready?
Yep.
Cool. I want you to imagine now that you are on the world stage, and every sentient being alive has gathered, watching, listening, tuning in to your message to the world. When you're ready, take a breath, take as long as you need, and do share with us. What is your message to the world right now?
Go easy on people, because you never know what people are dealing with behind closed doors.
Amen. It's interesting because that was a discussion that you and I had before we started recording, and it just came back as a perfect loop. Go easy on people, because you just don't know what kind of day they've had, or what they've been experiencing, and what they're going through. That's such a powerful principle. Thank you for sharing your time and energy with us today. If you guys want to learn more about David Hamilton, it's Dr. David, so Dr. David Hamilton in one word, drdavidhamilton.com. Facebook, it's David Hamilton PhD, and same on Instagram, David Hamilton PhD. I love your videos when you're out in nature and you're walking with your beautiful little dog, and you're saying, "This, I'm on a task. I'm working on the task, and the task is me. And today I'm taking time for me." And so I just got a lot of inspiration from your videos and what you shared on Instagram as well. So, David, I want to say thank you for your work. I really truly do believe that this is the kind of stuff that the world needs right now, and always have needed for that matter. But in these times of great change, I think this is really critical. So I just want to really take the moment to acknowledge you for the work that you do, for the kindness that you share, and for the opportunity that you've given us to learn more about how we can be kind in the world as well. So thank you so much.
I can also say thanks for sharing. You really inspired me with what you said about how you taught your son, and then you went and got those mats, because I think that was wonderful parenting. And secondly, that will probably stay with your son for the rest of his life, and that will actually shape some of the person that he becomes and the impact he then has in the world from now, but for the rest of his life. And that really moved me, hearing that. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing to have done. And I'm really glad that I got to hear you say that, because I take that now with me for the rest of the day. That's what I'll remember from our conversation for the rest of the day now, what you shared there.
Really honor you, mate. And for those listening, maybe if you're a parent, or maybe even if you just want to give something back, think about a selfless act that you could do, something like that, that'll also have a great effect on other people, that's not going to hurt or harm you in any way, shape or form, but maybe even bring you even more kindness as you do some things for others that you wish that others would do for you. Thank you, Dr. David Hamilton. It's been a privilege, my friend, and hopefully we'll get to connect again in the near future. I'm going to elevate your prayer and your work as much as I can. Thank you for being who you are and doing what you're doing.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Blessings, buddy.
And you too.